We open with a double first. This was the first steam excursion to penetrate the branches in West Wales beyond Carmarthen, and the first mainline steam banking operation since the end of steam a quarter of a century ago. The train was the first of 3 trips west of Carmarthen over the Whitsun Bank holiday at the end of May. It was to be hauled by Standard Class 4 tank number 80079 from Carmarthen to Pembroke Dock, over the sinuous single-track branch from Whitland. As can be seen, the weather did its best to spoil the day. With heavy rain and gale-force winds, it succeeded. Just outside the tunnel at Narberth, through which the line virtually turns a right angle, there is a shallow cutting bounded by trees. Although it wasn't autumn, the fresh spring leaves were being snatched by the wind, and a greasy rail resulted. To compound the problem, a restriction was placed on the speed at which the tank could negotiate the tunnel. So, when she came out of it, on the curve, it was impossible to maintain forward momentum, and she slipped to a stand. Here we see the restarted train with a banker. The only locomotive available in West Wales was the other steam loco, 44767, which was dispatched to the rescue, resulting in this historic occasion as they battle up the last part of the climb from the tunnel. The spirit of 1968 seems to be permeating all things in the railway press these days, with fond memories of filthy black fives and the other pitiful remnants of British Railway's once proud fleet of steam engines that creaked their way to the scrapyards a quarter of a century ago. Curiously, it was the requirements of a major cinema film, Shadowlands, that brought us a proper filthy black five on the Great Central, which, of course, meant that it was first choice for the photographers. Here we see her being taken off shed at the Great Central, ready to head the rake of wind cutter open steel wagons. The first priority was to acquire a brake van. The filth had been artistically applied by the film's effects department and sprayed onto the recently returned Black 5. She was specially repainted into BR lined black livery before the gunge was applied, the latter effectively toning down the lining. Of course, she's not the first dirty engine at the GC. A Boscastle was, but she's now cleaned up. The 5 was scheduled to remain in this condition for about 3 months. She was also turned to face north for the filming, as Clun Castle was also used, equally dirty, but still facing south. Another benefit from the filming was the clearance of the unrestored coaching stock from the siding adjacent to Loughborough Station, resulting in a new angle for the cameras. A suitably dull evening lent atmosphere to the train. This was a public open day event for the Windcutter, the wagons of which now live at the rapidly expanding Swithland sidings. Here the loco ran round the train. In the foreground is the new Down Loop. 4 tracks will once again run through the Swithland area, and a double-track main line will exist from Rothley to Corn, adding to the photogenic nature of this great preserved railway. For now, the Black 5 ran wrong road. The 2 run-pasts were staged at the Woodthorpe Bridge, the Stanier mixed traffic engine adding plenty of soot to the atmosphere. Over to the west, the Llangollen Railway ran a mixed goods train behind its standard Class 4 mogul. The great panorama, opened up by the Glyndebradwy extension, is seen from the opposite side to usual, as the train heads east along the Dee Valley. On the same weekend, the Seven Valleys Wagon Group staged a special event, with no less than 3 goods trains operating at the same time on 2 days, scheduled in between the regular passenger traffic. This included fly shunting demonstrations at Bewdley. Note the use of the Dean and Churchwood brake gear, exclusive to the Great Western. In the right background is Bradley Manor, recently completed and awaiting final painting. She is destined for the main line. A long freight ran between Kidderminster and Bewdley behind the Collet Mogul. The show at Bewdley was a convincing reconstruction of the great days of railways. The pannier seen shunting here was a visitor to the Severn Valley, 5775 from Keighley. Some shunting was quite exuberant. Fortunately, this wasn't repeated. A second local goods train ran to and from Highley. Alternating with 5775 was the Valley's own pannier 7714, recently returned to service and also in BR livery. Whilst the pannier simmered in the yard, a service passenger train appeared behind the Great Marquis. Panniers also starred in London, as London Underground Limited put on another of its spectacular Steam on the Met shows in late May. This is Quainton Road's L99 on the first weekend, when trains ran from Watford High Street to Amersham, with L99 and L90 from Tyseley, alternating runs with Dr. Peter Beat's LMS IVAT Mogul. These were run in connection with celebrations on the Grand Union Canal at Watford. The following weekend, the bank holiday, was to see the panniers working double-headed. Both are XLT engines and had been specially outshopped in that railway's attractive maroon livery. A number of the preserved panniers owe their continued existence to LT, which purchased them out of service from BR in the 1960s, retaining them for over a decade after BR dispensed with them. These were their home metals in LT days. The junction for the Watford line was the location of the Watford Tip, the main source of traffic for the panniers on LT. They ran together past their old haunts. As always, the climb through Chorley Wood was the best place to see the engines at work, framed as they were by the prettiest station on the line. The pannier's companion was the IVAT Mogul. Although prototypically incorrect, the full BR maroon livery suits the little Mogul to perfection and was most appropriate on the LT runs, with the maroon liveried TC coaches and Sarah Siddons provided, as always, for braking power. On her first run from Harrow-on-the-Hill, she was shadowed on the slow lines by one of the Class 20s, which has been loaned to LUL for ballast duties. The series was completed by a weekend of running over a new stretch of line for steam, from Ealing Broadway to West Kensington, to celebrate 125 years of the District Line. L99 was shedded at Ealing Common. Quainton's tank was really given a chance to stretch its legs to good effect on the 14 trains it ran over this weekend. The brick embankment in the background once carried an LSWR branch to Hammersmith, one of the few southern suburban branches to close. Last year, a standard tank worked on LT metals. This year, it was the turn of the Central Wales line to host one of these popular machines. The Seven Valleys 80079, only just passed for mainline work, worked the Llandod local southwards over the former LNWR route in mid-Wales. A week later, another train followed in the Standard's footsteps, as newly certificated Black 5 44767 attacked the climb to the evocatively named Sugarloaf Summit. This train called at fewer stations, the tank was an all-station stopper, and was said to be for the more serious enthusiasts. These were the first runs over the Central Wales line in preservation, but it appears they won't be the last. Who would have thought that the placid waters of the Welsh rivers could muster sufficient force to destroy bridges? Happily, this river hasn't done so. The disaster came a little further to the south. The runs were organised by Regional Railways Steam Coordinator Tom Clift, and the opportunity was taken to provide a really comprehensive programme of runs both over the Central Wales line and over the South Wales main line beyond Carmarthen. A week later, the Standard tank set out on the run which resulted in our opening scene. Whitland is the last pure junction in West Wales, the station seeing little change from its steam-era reconstruction. Here the standard tank took the diverging route to the south to Pembroke Dock. It never got there. The slipping at Narberth Tunnel meant that the train was terminated at Tenby, so that it could pick up its return timings, which were critical. The rain beating in from the Atlantic was very evident here, despite the shelter of an umbrella. The plan was for the train to return to Carmarthen, where the Black 5 would take it over and run along the main line through Whitland, this time taking the direct line onto Clarbeston Road and the branch to Fishgood Harbour. Here, the only remains of what was once a major Great Western Harbour terminus are the transshipment shed and a simple run-round loop. The locomotive ran tender first to Fishguard and then ran round its train, facing Smokebox first up the famous bank out of the station at Goodwick. The next day was to see a run to Milford Haven, and the following weekend the two engines double-headed back over the Central Wales line. This was a run which got great publicity for the wrong reasons. Throughout the journey through the mountains, the train was pursued by a television crew in a helicopter, which had a most unpleasant effect on soundtracks. Next time, we're taking a surface-to-air missile with us. The second real climb on the Central Wales line takes the train up to a tunnel at Llangindor. The chopper didn't dare come this low. The train had started at Carmarthen and was to run up the Marches line from Craven Arms back to Shrewsbury. Freight train productions have now spread to the former industrial branches. The Foxfield was the first to benefit. We start at the seldom used Blythe Bridge end, with cab first running up the hill from the exchange sidings. This was actually only the first of a series of goods train runs for the Foxfield, which was to operate them every weekend through July and August. After the run passed at the Blythe Bridge end, the photographic party took a break at Caverswall Road, the line's headquarters, as the locomotives shunted and sorted their train for the next session. Locomotives were the Bagnall-built 040 saddle tank Harwoodine and the very short wheel-based Peckett number 11. The celebrations are to mark the centenary of the coal line to Foxfield Colliery, which is situated at the northern end of the line. This is at the foot of a 1-in-19 bank, which has been refurbished to allow workings at this end of the railway in 1993. Sidings in the actual colliery are to become available as well, and the train of mineral wagons acquired from the Chatterley-Whitfield Mining Museum will be the stars at the railway's principal weekend of July the 24th and 25th. Here's a preview. Both double and single-headed trains were run, with equally spectacular results. The principal steam on the main lines in our period was the Central Wales programme, but the northern part of that route also saw a farewell run from 6201 Princess Elizabeth. This was her farewell performance for now. The run was arranged to mark the end of her 7-year mainline certificate and ran from Crewe to Worcester via the Welsh Marches route. A stopover at her original base at Hereford could no longer include a visit to Bulmers, as the railway centre has now closed. Oh, incidentally, one more locomotive visited it after the King we saw last time. 44767 visited Bulmers for servicing on its way to Shrewsbury for the Welsh runs. The main stopover was at Pontypool Road, where a water and photographic call was made alongside the dual carriageway which now fills the cutting where once a major railway yard stood. The Princess watered here, as she was to avoid Newport by using the east side of the triangle. The departure was very prolonged and slippery. The route used was not only unusual in missing out Newport, but also in using the Midland Main Line from Gloucester through Cheltenham to Worcester, a line to be incorporated in the new Cotswold Venturer series to start in 1993. Lizzie's mainline career for now came to an end with a suitably rousing send-off from her loyal admirers. The Stania Pacific is now to go to Butterley for her mainline overhaul. So there will be two princesses there together at last. Her sister, PMR, is a regular performer on the S&C in 1993. They are very alike. Here's another Princess Slipper. This was the result of greasy and rusty rails. By the time she'd passed Clitheroe, she had got well underway. Four locomotives are allocated to S&C workings this summer. The second is Blue Peter. So far, no light engine workings over the West Coast Main Line have materialised, and it looks like they never will. The other two locomotives are Sir Nigel Gresley and Duchess of Hamilton. The latter, seen here, has been scheduled to work the 25th anniversary special for the 15 Guinea special, now a two-way working over the S&C, with no Britannia. Will it happen at all? The special will see Black Fives double-headed. Two of them work the West Highland this year. This is 44767, now in Scotland after its Welsh adventure. Will 1993's real highlight happen in Scotland? What price double-headed Black Fives in September on the Highland Main Line? Book your spot on the hill now. September will also see double-headed 460s in the south. Eastleigh's S15 E828 undertook her mainline loaded test run in early July, starting at Westbury with a 47 added to a 12-coach train. What a start! The 47 was removed at Salisbury, and the train, after a minor delay caused by the sticking lubricator again, ran via Romsey to Eastleigh and back to Salisbury. We bounce back to Scotland, where another 828 has returned on the Strathspey Railway. This 828 is the only preserved example of the Caledonian Railway's classic Scottish 060 goods engines. This was Macintosh's improved and enlarged version of the Drummond Jumbo class, which, as the LSWR Black Motor class, had been the predecessor of the S15 class on the Southern Railway. Here she is climbing up through the woods from Aviemore. Head-on views show how narrow these 060s were and are. There were nearly 400 of these engines to 3 basic patterns, and this 1899 built machine is the sole survivor. Here she enters Boat of Garton Station with her 4-coach train. These coaches were repainted into LMS and BR maroon last year. 828 was originally one of the prisoners of Glasgow Museum, alongside her Caledonian compatriot, the famous single number 123. Another of the inmates, the Highland Jones Goods, was a familiar visitor to the Strathspey line in its BR days, as the route was the original Highland Railway main line. It would be very nice to see her here again. The Strathspey has a turntable, so you can believe your eyes. 828 has returned to service in 1993 after a 13-year overhaul. She has featured on the railway's posters and timetables for some time. Now she can be seen in the flesh. Like many preserved railways, the Strathspey has a small permanent staff. We'd like to say thank you to Lawrence, Stephen and Colin for always welcoming us to their railway and accommodating our requests even when they are busy.
He said, I'm getting nowhere with you. Just standing like this. No. Just standing like this. The owner she's after.
One small job remains to be done. The valve spindles are a little oval, necessitating packing the glands. These will be fixed soon, but in the meantime give plenty of atmospheric steam from the wrong places. Normally in July you wouldn't see the steam, but July 1993 was very cold. On the previous day to this there had been sleet at Aviemore. It was still bitterly cold, which gave us shots we hadn't expected to get. The major diesel gala of the early summer took place on the ultimate summer railway, the Paignton to Kingsware, Torbay and Dartmouth line. A pair of 58s on a freight isn't unusual, but an unfitted freight. The line belied its slogan for the weekend. A first was the appearance of two 73s on a preserved line. The Messerschmitt and the Pullman liveried examples headed upgrade into Churston. This is the only passing loop, and the only example of a 50 in this programme. However, it is superb. Hurry along, please. The 58s didn't cover themselves with glory. At Kingsware they managed to derail the goods train and were sent back to Paignton light engine. The other notable visitor was the Deltic D9000 Society's Gordon Highlander. D9016's departure from Kingsware was almost as spectacular and smoky as a steam departure. You'll see that she's working on two engines and that one only cuts in as she increases speed. This was a characteristic of the machines after they were fitted for ETH. The group's other Deltic, D9000, is on course for mainline running later this year. Scotland may well be the location for the first preserved diesel runs. We enjoyed a cab run over one of the country's last semaphore main lines aboard the prototype Class 158 Express Unit 158701.
A North British station. North British, yeah. Opened 1842 with the opening of the line to Edinburgh. So we had the 150 year celebration last year.
Of course, yes. Yes, I came up for that.
And this tunnel was whitewashed, turn left, and
Cowlairs Incline was originally worked by rope haulage, as the early steam engines had difficulty in ascending the steep climb. To the right is the new cord line to enable trains to run directly to Springburn. It's due for commissioning later this year. At Cowlairs West Junction, the route to the West Highlands branch is left.
Where does it get to the low level then?
Eastfield Depot was deserted except for an engineer's Class 37 stable here. The depot is, of course, completely closed now.
And Eastfield is not regular design for stabling machines. All right.
The Shell oil terminal at Bishopbriggs is now closed. To our right are the Cadder marshalling yard sidings, now the province of the engineers.
What have we got here? Is this engineer's sidings?
this was Cadder Yard, which is quite an extensive yard both sides.
Yes.
Now the up yard on the left hand side is closed, as you can see, and the down yard on the right hand side is used as the engineer side. Busy.
Is that signal box still live?
Yeah.
And it's operating the mechanic? From the junction you get a few.
We leave the Edinburgh main line at Greenhill Upper Junction, and at Lower Junction the former Caledonian main line from Cumbernauld joins from the left. At Carmews, the lines to the right, forming a triangle, serve Falkirk and Grangemouth.
Yes, when they come down from Donetsk. Yes, because this is Larwood. Quite a good selection of signals here. We don't stop here.
When you're on the upper beach, through the centre road. Robert Loft box at the right hand side.
Yes. We've got some freight here, or is this engineers?
This is the stone loading yard.
Oh, for the engineers.
It's picked this month.
The old Alloa branch once left at Plean Junction. Now even the stub has lost its traffic.
I was going to say, it doesn't look very new. Where's that factory there? Factory there.
Stirling is the gateway to the Highlands, and the most important intermediate town on our route. It was the only stop on our journey. The plethora of signals here includes the last lower quadrant in Scotland, a shunt signal. We are now on the Caledonian main line. Incidentally, for Sassenachs, Caledonia is the Gaelic for Scotland. The remaining branch to Alloa, along the northern bank of the Forth, is currently being refurbished for the reintroduction of passenger trains. Here we passed a 37 with a Far North Line's green and cream coach, heading south for overhaul.
There's one of the ones used up on the cow line.
Right, it's one of them. But the names.
Yes.
Old lady. You can see quite a few there. When aboard.
He's come up to, is it Dunblane next?
Captain Ross Tunnel.
Local trains generally turn back at Dunblane. This was once the junction for the Callander and Oban line to the West Highlands.
So it's one of those very shallow ones that could easily be underground.
And this on the left here was the branch to Oban, if you can call that a branch. up through
Yes, on
Cardiff.
the same main line or a cross
Cardiff.
country line. Is it?
Loops and holding sidings still exist at a number of former stations on this route.
Oh yes, yes, the 4 or your phone.
In fact, they put them on a number of years ago. They were short of power. One year they put them on Glasgow to Dundee stop trains, which we still had at that time.
Oh yes.
And it's so bad during the winter that they may not believe this. They actually issued the drivers.
Gleneagles is served by a number of the Aberdeen services, but not ours.
It's interesting that the HSTs stopped at Gleneagles. What do we go through?
Of course, most of them up here travel by Range Rover or Land Rover.
Well, who has that?
Because most of the locals up here
Oh, I see
travel
what
by
you mean, yes, of course. Yes.
Land Rover.
Nicholas Field, I didn't presume you switched that. No, no, it's only
No,
same now.
no, none of your good.
A bridge was washed away at Fort Eviot in the winter. The white walls mark the new span.
So half the bridge went, or half the bridge was renewed. It's quite busy, isn't it, these days?
At Hilton Junction to the south of Perth, the line from Edinburgh and Ladybank joins us just before we plunge into Moncrief Tunnel.
They ran all the Aberdeens via Dundee.
All the way across. Yeah, I mean, was it sort of between the bridges?
Perth's yards are almost deserted now. The old steam shed was to our left here.
And you'll be pleased to hear that the Weedcombe train's scheduled for later on this week.
The route indicator shows we have the road into platform 2, the severely curved platform to the east of the station, which serves the line to Dundee and Aberdeen, the destination of our train. Glimpsed briefly under the bridge on the extreme left is a Gresley teak brake. A number of now redundant Class 26 diesels was also stored at Perth.
Tories up here.
Must be the last enclave of them up in Scotland. Quite a bit of custom for the train.
The centre road is used for the occasional release of locomotives. Beyond the platform end, all 3 tracks converge to a single line to cross the River Tay on a long curving bridge. Here we left the train.
You'll notice the catch point that both ends are double-ended.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
But we stay in Scotland for the start of our news roundup. Later the same day, we filmed the northbound Highland Enterprise, flagship of this year's locomotive-hauled trains on regional railways. Here it's north of Dalwhinnie. The Highland Enterprise, seen here southbound, is normally hauled by 37427, the first Inverness-based 37 to receive RR livery, with the important variation of its ScotRail branding in place of regional railways. The locomotive also bears the name Highland Enterprise. It is one of the 37 fours that used to work in Wales and was once named Bontabermo. Curiously, some of the original ScotRail 37 fours now work in Wales and have received Welsh names. most celebrated loco-hauled services in recent years have been the Class 20 headed summer-dated trains to Skegness. This year they run every weekday and start at Leicester, travelling via Nottingham and Sleaford. Despite a note in the timetable that the trains only run from the 19th of July to the 3rd of September, they have run since the start of the timetable in May. Barrow sees its fair share of loco haulage. The Kent Viaduct is once again subject to single line working as repairs are effected to its up road. 31465 is on the 0930 from Barrow to Preston. The first coach still bears West of England branding, but has successfully been reliveried from NSE into a form of regional colouring by overpainting the red band and patch painting the NSE branding. Regional's loco-hauled trains include hired-in Class 47s. This is the 0902 from Birmingham New Street to Great Yarmouth, a very difficult train to trace through the timetables. It goes via Burton-on-Trent, Derby and Nottingham before heading to East Anglia. The 47-7's brief reign on the West of England line has come to an end. With but 3 days to go, 47716 leaves Tisbury for Exeter with a 1705 from Waterloo, normally a 159 turn. On the last Saturday of all, the Duke of Edinburgh's award is seen heading west once again at the refurbished Overton station. Only a few trains were still loco-hauled, and on the Monday the full 159 service was instituted. The sign is most appropriate for locomotive haulage, as it bows out of mainline work. The Salisbury to Exeter route was the last steam main line, and was now the last diesel locomotive main line. On this Saturday, an extra service was run using the last remaining TC sets with a Class 33-1 pushing them. It had been to Exeter and was now returning to Waterloo. It would then go to Basingstoke and back to its base at Bournemouth. Network's Wessex turbos have taken over the West of England line, and its original turbos have spread their wings as well. This is one of the new air-conditioned 166s on the new service to Stratford-upon-Avon, giving the town its first through service to London for years. As part of the deal with regional railways, for Network to take over the last of the 158s to create the 159s, it was agreed that Network would provide original turbos to work Cotswold line services via Evesham to Worcester and on to Birmingham. Here we see intercity and Network trains at a regional railway station. The turbo was held outside the station until the HST came to a stop, and then was signalled forward. Original plans indicated that the last units of the turbo order would be outshopped in regional railways livery for this service, but at present, standard Thames turbo units are employed. Note the open hopper windows. The 166s are branded Turbo Express and have fixed windows as they are air-conditioned. Once connected to the Cotswolds line, the cross-city route to Redditch was due to go live on the 12th of July, the same day as 159s took over in the south. In their last days, the Tyseley DMUs took on a careworn appearance and had mixed formations. This unit has 2 driving cars at one end. Due to the problems with Class 323 deliveries, the electric service has started with cascaded Class 304 units, some still in the old blue and grey livery. Manchester Airport's new station opened in the spring. It is also due to have 323s in the Manchester PTE livery, but again, its opening services have had to be undertaken by old stock, in this case Class 305s. Sprinters also visit the station with regular services from Blackpool. The 305s have also received the PTE livery. Another new line is the Robin Hood line to the north of Nottingham, now open through Hucknall to Newstead. It will eventually run to Mansfield with dedicated sprinters. Merseyrail livery has been applied to a number of early sprinters in the northwest, and curiously are frequently to be seen on Manchester to Blackpool services under the wires through Preston. The yellow livery seems an odd choice for trains. The same basic colours of yellow and grey adorn the trains of the future. In June, the first Channel Tunnel train came to Britain through the undersea bores and emerged in front of the national press at Cheriton. The TMST was headed and tailed by French locomotives, the first working of a passenger train from one country to the other, a moment of history. After detaching the French locomotives, a pair of Class 73s and the Channel Tunnel Experimental Class 33 were used to haul the TMST unit to the North Pole depot. From there, it was due to undergo static tests and then work over the Continental Main Line in late July for extended tests. The unit is a shortened pre-series test set number PS1. Its companion, the full-length 2+18 PS2, being due to appear here later in the year. The future has arrived. We are no longer an island.